Well, good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Tom Schlueter with today's Tom's Take. Over the last several weeks, I've been talking to you a lot about the Lord has placed us in the high places, on the high ground, which is extremely essential when you're dealing with any aspect of warfare in the natural realm. Same goes true with the spiritual realm. The Lord is causing us, especially through the avenue of worship, and exalting the Lord and King. Tehillim, the high praises of his people raised up to God. He is elevating us to those high places. He's bringing us in to higher ground. It is now time for us to act from that higher ground. Every morning we do this 15-minute prayer call. Monday morning, it was dedicated to some worship. We actually played some music, and we worshiped together and went to the high place. Yesterday, we were reminded again that it was a place that we need to go to, the high place, and to ascend to that place in God. And so it was very important for us to be still and to know that He is God and to move into that position with Him. Well, this morning, I don't know why it's happening, but I know why it's happening. I'm waking up here about 4:30 every morning, which I don't normally do. So I just went ahead and went in the other room and just laid in my lazy boy before the Lord and just was quiet with Him, just listening for what He might have to say. He didn't give me any powerful revelation, but He did bring a calmness over my spirit, and I actually fell back to sleep for about an hour and a half. We then went to our prayer call this morning, and our good friend Darla Ryden from the Houston area brought us again to the same place, realizing that the Lord is wanting us from a position in Him to take the high places. She quoted from 2 Corinthians 10, starting with verse 3, very familiar to all of us. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience once your obedience is complete. Obviously, we fight with spiritual weapons. As she was praying and reading that, the Lord spoke a simple phrase to me. Do it again. Do it again. And as I pondered on that and said, basically, Lord, what do you want? What do you want to say? He reminded me of another phrase from many years ago that used to be very common as we begin to do intercessory work all across our city here in Arlington, Texas. And it was, I want you to pray on site with insight. So I decreed into that in this morning's prayer, realizing that the Lord wants us to do it again. Matter of fact, He never wants us to stop doing it. He never wants us to stop analyzing, not through our mind and through our emotions and through our soulish desires, but through His Spirit in us to analyze or receive insight, revelatory insight, as we journey through life, so that the Lord can show us where there are these strongholds, where He can show us these things that are a constant reminder of the enemy's presence in our neighborhood or our city or our state or beyond. Pray with insight on site, or pray on site with insight. I remember that phrase came back many, many years ago, or came to us many, many years ago. I can remember going to a conference by Ed Sovosa here in Arlington. It had to be 20 years ago. And he was setting up lighthouses of prayer. And he was simply saying that we want you, as a community as a house in your community, as a house in your neighborhood, to be a lighthouse of prayer. In other words, to pray diligently for the streets that surround you, your neighbors that surround you, the businesses that surround you. Get out on the land, walk the land, drive the land, and on site, receive insight. So we did that. I can remember some of those first times we were walking from our house. Our house was the parsonage of the Lutheran church that we now serve, but we still live there, so we're on the same property. And our neighborhood has really been secure in the Lord. I mean, we've walked around this church, I don't know how many times, praying for God's blessings, praying for God's strategies, praying for God to remove anything that might be dark. I remember one instance especially, I started walking around the church, and 3 times around our church, our property, 4 acres, is 1 mile. So a lot of times we'll just walk a mile, my wife Kay and I. This time I was walking by myself, and I had been about finishing up the 3rd time, and the Lord says, I want you to go around 7 times today. And I said, okay. So I continued to walk. As I started my 7th walk, I didn't think, I heard every kind of animal sound you could possibly hear in the neighborhood. Howling and screeching, birds and dogs, and it was totally quiet until that time. And all of a sudden, all of this is taking place. And I'm saying, Lord, what's going on? He says, finish your 7th time. And as I finished it, and I just continued to pray into what was going on, I finished the 7th time, and it all stopped. One of those other times, I was walking in the neighborhood, going a block away from us to the east. There was an ice cream store down there that we always loved going to. And I was walking down there and doing what we had been asked to do, be a praying, walking person representing God's lighthouse. As I came into that next block, doing this now, there was a veil of darkness on the entire neighborhood. 1 block. And I prayed about it, nothing changed. Went down to the ice cream store, prayed coming back, it didn't change. So I just asked the Lord, I said, Lord, what do we need to do? He says, I need you to ask for insight. And so I did. We found out that there were a lot of bad things going on. There had been a suicide in one of the homes. There was a drug house in one of the houses. The lawns were not kept up. They hadn't been mowed in weeks. It's one of those old stories that when they finally mowed, they found their car. But that's almost what it was like. So with that insight, I now said, well, Lord, what do you want me to do? He says, do what you've been asked to do. Release my blessing into this neighborhood. Release my light into this neighborhood. You've been given insight, now pray on site. So for the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks or so, I would walk intentionally down that walk. And one day, all of a sudden, the darkness disappeared spiritually. It wasn't dark naturally. It was gone spiritually, the veil. I continued to pray. And over a period of about 3 months, the house where the suicide had taken place, someone new came in with their family. They started taking care of their property. The drug house was busted, arrested, new people moved in. Lawns were mowed. People started having jobs. Families started moving into the area. And I realized that God had given us the high place. Let me exhort you with this. Do it again. Sometimes we do something like what I just mentioned to you, but that was 20 years ago. And we continue to do much of that as we continue to walk and drive around the area, but maybe not as intentionally as we used to. But the Lord made it clear this morning, do it again. So I'm exhorting you this morning As you're walking your neighborhood, as you're shopping in your neighborhood store, as you're taking mail to the post office, as you're going out and carrying out errands of your day, as you're going into your business. Maybe some of you are going to be traveling, maybe going on a late vacation, or maybe you're going to be going into another state or into another town nearby, maybe on business or maybe for pleasure. Go on site with insight. Ask the Lord to reveal to you the strongholds, the darkness, the places that the enemy says, these are mine. But go in there knowing that we now have the high ground. He is giving us the high places. And go in not with weapons of natural warfare, but with the weapons of spiritual warfare, and take down those places and restore light into your neighborhood, into your city, into your state, or even into the nation. Do it again. Do it again. Go on site with insight.